You are listening to the last story of the month for the Clarkesworld Magazine podcast. Welcome to September 2025, issue 228. As always, I want to thank you for your ongoing support. Whether this is your first time listening to a podcast or you've been here since the beginning, maybe somewhere in the middle. Every subscription, every patreon.com/Clarkesworld contribution, every donation goes to bring you excellent fiction like the one you're about to hear. And we cannot do this without you. So I appreciate every little bit. Our story is titled A World of Their Own. It is by Robert Falco. Robert Falco is a Massachusetts resident who writes under the constant supervision of his pet bearded dragon. He loves gribbly little creatures and all things related to outer space. His work appears in Andromeda Spaceways magazine. So, my dear listener, I hope you can sit back, relax, and let me tell you a story. Don't move. Rico, too, froze. Slowly, she angled her optics toward the creature that watched her through the crack in the drainage pipe. A magpie. Head cocked, its glowing eyes opened and closed with a mechanical aperture. Its slick, rubbery body glistened from recent rain. Rain that would return. Rain that would destroy. It'll get bored, Rico. Just keep still. Easy for base camp to say. They weren't the ones with a diamond-hard beak pointed at them. Encountering biomechanical wildlife was just part of surveying, and these creatures were why she was here in the first place. But that didn't mean she enjoyed being pecked, scratched, and bitten. There. I think it's... The magpie struck and pulled Rico, too, from the pike. One of her legs buckled and snapped. She struggled in the magpie's beak as it took flight, its wings beating through the misty sky. The creature wouldn't eat her. It couldn't. It lacked the ability to digest inorganics. The magpie had probably just been attracted to the shine of her metal carapace. That didn't make her situation any less unfortunate. Hang in there, Rico. You're going to be all right. The magpie carried her high above the rusted bones of the launch complex. The complex was roughly 3 miles in diameter, with its south end built around a dark water reservoir. An intricate network of long-abandoned factories and energy plants filled every inch of the remaining space. It reminded Rico, too, of her processing chips. Everything built with such a purpose and intent, each subsection linked in a network of pathways not unlike a data bus. All of these pathways fed into a central point. A point now hollow, emptied of the great star-faring vessels the launch complex had once been built to produce and fuel. Many of these factories still functioned, to an extent. Machinery chugged together in automated routines that had long since lost their purpose, their sounds layering in a metallic din. Vast networks of exhaust pipes pumped water vapor into the sky, a byproduct of the complex's colossal cooling systems, which condensed into clouds that promised torrential rain. But everything moved to a discordant rhythm, grinding against rusted gears and misfiring systems. Rico, too, snapped several images of the launch complex and sent them back to camp. Her reports detailed the structural integrity of the various subsections reported by several LiDAR models she'd previously constructed. To the north, her team's conservation caravan sat in the mud, so small beside the gargantuan complex. Great stuff, Rico. We've already prioritized several regions for evacuation. We'll begin wrangling the wildlife after the next storm. Keep it up. Rico, too, found it difficult to share in their optimism, and not because of her current situation. The launch complex was collapsing. Entire segments of the once grand complex had been washed away by past storms. Everything rattled, as if palpitating. She found it ironic. The very systems designed to sustain the complex now destroyed it. Even after her team had isolated and disabled several subsections, a vast majority remained attached to unstable energy reactors, better left untouched. But the complex's decaying stability raised a concerning question. Did Rico, too, and her team truly have enough time to save the creatures that called these ruins home? Things hadn't always been this way, caught between apocalyptic storms. When the creators left for the stars, they had left behind a broken world. That world had since been churned into an ocean of mud. Little remained from before the climate collapse and the unnatural cutting rain that bored through concrete and bent metal. The past had drowned, and then drowned again. For so long, Rico, too, and her siblings had clung to this muddy world, abandoned and alone, at least until these creatures began appearing. No one knew how or why these biomechanical beings had appeared. Her kin had assumed that the launch complexes had long since served their purposes, delivering the creators into the cosmos. Yet from their ruins emerged entire forms of life. Some of her more optimistic siblings theorized that the creators had designed the complexes to spawn and spread this life back into an otherwise dead world, a theory that led to even more pushback against outright dismantling the complex's limping systems. Rico, too, was skeptical. The creators had a pattern of disregarding their surroundings. The storms were a constant reminder of that. Why would they care to fix what they destroyed? Countless more theories echoed through her siblings' discussion channels. Although Rico too questioned them, the facts were simple. These new life forms were at risk. One by one, the launch complexes were falling into a quagmire of their own making, taking with them these budding ecosystems. The magpie breached the cloud layer, blocking her view of the facility below. Only the tallest tips of the tallest satellite towers pierced the dark cumulonimbus, red lights pulsing in a long-forgotten sequence. The magpie circled the tower on the far edge of the complex, far above the turbulent skies. Her team's caravan, visible through breaks in the clouds, lay cluttered with containment machinery and transportation vehicles. Like everything Rico, too, and her siblings created, they had been constructed from the creator's leftover machinery. This was how she and her sibling had survived for so long, repurpose the old and maintain. It was either that or be swept away. Despite her siblings' ingenuity, Rico too feared for the future. Could they truly hold on forever? The force of the magpie's beating wings buffeted a corroding spire as it dropped Rico too into its nest. She rolled across detritus tied together by old cabling and stopped before 3 curious hatchlings. The hatchlings watched her with the same glowing eyes as their mother. One of them, a clumsy thing whose synthetic skin hadn't fully covered its mechanical skeleton, gave her a curious peck. It chittered and scampered back to its siblings. Record what you can. We're still trying to figure out how to get the magpies to take our sanctuaries. Any information about their growth cycle will make a big difference back home. Hang tight, Rico. We'll work out a way to get you down from there. At least you're above the rain clouds, and those little fellas are cute. Seemingly satisfied, the mother magpie beat its wings and returned to the ruins below. The hatchlings, emboldened by the apparent lack of danger, crowded Rico too. She marveled at them. Her blocky metal frame contrasted with their sleek synthetic bodies. So different, yet similar. The first magpies appeared 2 decades ago. Like all creatures found inside the launch complexes, their designs echoed long-extinct animals: magpies, frogs, bats, snakes, and much more. On the other hand, Rico too and her siblings traced their lineage back to lifeless proto-drones, computers, and calculators. Did biological designs make these creatures more alive than her kin? Rico too liked to think both parties equal, yet an undercurrent of doubt tugged at her, a feeling shared by many of her siblings. While her kind had iterated upon themselves for generations, working tirelessly to stay functioning, these new creatures filled with ease every niche that organic life once occupied. Her thoughts were interrupted by the smack of a hardened beak. Rico too shrieked, the limit of her offensive capabilities, and the hatchlings retreated. She monitored the creatures with newfound caution before, after some time, falling back into her thoughts while broadcasting the hatchlings' behavior back to camp. Sharing this world with beings that didn't just resemble ancient life forms, but adapted like them, proved a difficult hurdle for many of her siblings. The Resource Retention Cell even petitioned to abandon the conservation project completely, claiming the project was a waste of precious materials and effort. But Rico, too, knew her people were better than that. These creatures had no say in their creation, and neither could they comprehend the danger they faced. Rico, too, couldn't abandon these creatures as the creators had. Rico, too, had lived that life. She wouldn't wish it upon anything else. Her cousins, because that's what they were, needed protecting. A squawk warned her of the hatchling's next move. They formed a semicircle around her, beaks out. Rico, too, shrieked again, but the little creatures were ready. Apparently fed up with their newest toy, they charged and bucked her over the nest's lip and into the abyss. Rico, too, fell. And fell. Bang! Clang! Crash! Bouncing from steel beam to rooftop to rubble down to an oil-slicked puddle, Rico too splashed to a stop. Rico, are you okay? Rico tried to right herself, but her legs clicked in protest. Great. From one broken leg to 6. Luckily, her front manipulation appendages still worked, and with significant effort, she managed to drag herself out of the puddle and right into the gaze of a fat, wide-eyed bullfrog. Rico? The bullfrog blinked. It expanded its throat, its yellowed belly stretching with its rubbery skin, and let out a low, resonating croak. Its pink eyes pulsed against the gray world as it inspected her. Like with the magpies, she wouldn't be edible. The bullfrog fed on local puddle flies and synthetic rodents. But bullfrogs were stupid. And stupid creatures always seem to put things in their big, stupid mouths. It did just that. Don't worry, Rico. We're sending help. Hang in there. Overhead, the clouds condensed, dark as pitch. Time was running out. She'd need to find shelter before the coming torrent reduced her to scrap. Easier said than done when hanging from the mouth of a synthetic bullfrog. The bullfrog hopped through crumbling pipes, squeezed down clogged gutters, and flopped through blasted warehouses. Overhead, howling winds created by millions of exhaust fans sang of the coming storm. Did the creators foresee the squat bullfrog bounding through their factory floors? Would they care? Or was this just one more creature born into a world only to be punished by its creators? Rico, too, wondered about life before the climate collapse. She had devoured the few records back in the old databases. Those records bordered on scripture detailing green forests and blue oceans. Back then, there had been no machines and no launch complexes. Even the creators had supposedly lived small, simple lives. It was a world long erased, but that didn't mean the future had to be doomed forever. The mistakes of those who came before didn't have to dictate the lives of the present. Through a hole in the warehouse roof, the pipe canopy appeared out of the growing cloud cover. Water vapor plumed from countless tubes like 1,000 volcanoes moments before eruption. Another theory, put forth by the Energy Conservation Cell, claimed that the creators kept the launch complexes functioning to assist in powering their starbound civilization. These theorists hoped that after the last complex fell, the creators would be forced to return. Rico, too, hoped the opposite. The creators didn't care about them. It was their indifference that had shackled Rico, too, and her siblings to a broken world. It was their indifference that threatened the creatures that lived in these ruins. If the creators never returned, it would be too soon. The world no longer belonged to them. It never had. Suddenly, all the scratches, pecks, and mouths she had traveled in didn't seem so bad. These creatures were just trying to survive. They had been given life as she had, and the creators threatened those lives just the same. The storm is going to be rough, Rico. The launch complex output is mixing with a storm front that blew in from the coast. Rico 3 isn't far, but we're worried she won't be able to reach you in time. Rico 3 wouldn't make it. Raindrops already slammed against the concrete. The bullfrog quickened its pace and in its panic smacked her against a metal pipe, knocking her free. She spun out, sliding across the floor of ruins pressed together by the weight of time, rain, and unimaginable neglect. She stopped in the hollow of a flooded factory whose purpose had long since been forgotten. The ceiling sagged and cracked. Wire-like vines snaked up the walls, blossoming with crystalline flowers that cupped the rain. A roiling layer of black clouds suffocated the sky. Rain hammered the factory. It was as if the creators themselves had been listening in on her thoughts, angered by the audacity of a small survey drone questioning their intentions. Of course Rico, too, knew this wasn't true. The creators didn't care, neither did the complexes or the rains that drowned the world. She was engulfed by an apocalypse of crushing water and shaking earth. Somewhere, a structure collapsed and its impact shaking the factory. This was the creator's legacy, a legacy she refused to accept. Rico, hey, we'll send as soon as we can. Something flapped through the clouds, escaping above the storm. More bullfrogs splashed against the rising flood. Mechanical bats with glowing blue eyes swarmed to high ground, taking shelter in small pipes and cracks. A biomechanical world panicked. Rico, too, pulled herself along the floor, using the rising current to propel herself until she reached a storage shelf. A water snake slithered down from the rooftop. It curled around Rico, too, and grasped for the purchase on a rusted pallet. For a moment, she panicked, but the creature didn't bite. Instead, it balled tight around her. The water came. It slammed them against the wall, but the snake held firm with its muscular body. In turn, Rico 2's weight helped wedge them in place. It was far from a safe shelter, but together, biomechanical and mechanical, they supported each other in the back corner of the factory as the storm raged and screamed around them. She inspected the snake, trying to ignore the deluge that threatened to collapse the factory, the launch complex, the world. The creature's synthetic components were black, its metal tinged green. Its tongue flicked against her in what she imagined was nervousness. Rico 2 wondered at its original purpose, but quickly stopped herself. Its purpose didn't matter. It only mattered that this creature was. It lived for itself, not for anything else. They may both trace their existence to the creators, but the creators were gone and never coming back. The storm raged on. Rico 2 clasped onto her cousin and held fast, because that was all she could do, hold on. It was all any of them could do. So she held on to the snake, and the snake held on to the pallet. Rain fell and thunder pealed. This cycle of death and destruction should never have been, yet she knew it would end one day. They just needed to hold on. Rico 3 came to retrieve her after the storm. The water snake had long since slithered away, leaving her sodden on the drain factory floor. Her sibling wrapped corded arms around her, hoisted her up, and began the slow trudge back to camp. Rico 2 was exhausted. The cloud cover had diminished, revealing a canopy of silent pipes. Fresh rubble formed mountains that piled above sunken structures. Tubing lay strewn like spilled guts. A magpie flew past, something reflective in its beak. They reached the border, where factories and ruins gave way to muddy wastes. Her kin embraced her, began organizing her repairs, and thanked her for her efforts. Rico 2 didn't need thanks. She hadn't done any more work than the rest of them. For several hours, Rico 2 watched her kin return with more and more creatures from the ruins, placing them into containment destined for distant sanctuaries. One day, these ruins would disappear. One day, the creators will be remembered only through archives and stories. And when the final storms passed and the last launch complex sank into the mud, those abandoned would remain, siblings and cousins together in a world of their own. What are your thoughts on the story? You can send an email. I'm kate@clarkesworldmagazine.com. That's Clark with an E. And we hope you can join us next month for a whole new slate of stories. I do hope you're well and hanging in there. And I do hope you'll come back, should you so choose. And until then, my dear listener, I bid you a very fond and hopefully very temporary farewell.